This is Money Moves on VSiN, the sports betting network.
Happy Friday, folks. Welcome in. It's Jonathan Von Tobel here on Money Moves. We've got a great show on tap for you over the course of the next 2 hours. Really excited to get into it. We got a lot of breaking news in the National Football League that we have to get to, including some bodies now hitting injured reserve for key teams, including one out in Germany. We'll go over all of the breaking news today. A little bit more in the gambling world, too, off the field. Can't wait to get to some of those thoughts and more. So let's not waste any more time, and let's get right to it.
It's time for the top headlines and topics of the day. This is The Rundown.
Part of the reason why we're so excited is our wonderful guest list on a Friday. We're usually joined by Mike Palm in studio. Looking forward to talk to Mike about everything we've seen so far, get his take on the National Football League post-trade deadline, what some of these teams look like, and a little bit of hockey. Will Hill will be with us as well as we get his thoughts for the weekend. And a new name joining us here today. Very excited to welcome in Chuck Booth, who's going to join us out from CBS to get a thought on the weekend that will be. It is a football Friday, so we got to talk a little Premier League and coming out of another week, match week, if you will, of Champions League. What does the futures board look like? We'll talk about that with Chuck. And then Zach Cohen, I don't want to give it away, but coming up in the second hour, we got a big announcement, and we're going to do it with Zach when he joins us at about 12:30 p.m. Pacific time, 3:30 Eastern. You can figure it out on your own. Next up, as we look ahead to what we'll be doing today, very much also looking forward to what we're going to talk about in the association, because we got a big Friday card. Got a lot that I like that either means good things or bad things. It's never really in the middle. Very much looking forward to some of these, including, man, oh man, I am always constantly drawn to some of the bad teams, and there are some stinkers on the card. Memphis in action, the Jazz, although the Jazz haven't really been that bad. And we do like, of course, quite a few. So we'll get to some of the breakdowns on every single one of the games. Zach will do it with us, but of course, I'll have my thoughts on the NBA Friday card. And last, and actually I do think least this time around, where we begin our show today with some mile-high mediocrity. What in the world were we forced to witness last night between the Denver Broncos and the Las Vegas Raiders? Broncos get the win, 10-7. Game stays under the total. Broncos as about 8.5, 9-point favorites. They fail to get the cover. Never really in doubt for the Las Vegas Raiders. Win up 7-0, and then it was an ugly game from there for both teams, really. But we have to start with the team that is the contender, the team that is currently right now in control of the 1 seed in the AFC. We'll see if the Colts can match their record. They, of course, have the head-to-head tiebreaker if they can get the win over Atlanta this coming weekend. But we'll expand on this. Big news for them is DeForest Buckner hits injured reserve. But the Broncos last night, they again get a victory here where they barely get by the skin of their teeth. Every single one of these victories in these recent weeks seems to be just that, outside of blowing out the Dallas Cowboys. But this offense is front and center, and we'll talk about Bo Nix momentarily, but I think we really just have to talk about this performance overall. Let's hear from Sean Payton last night, because it's another ugly performance, less than 4 yards per 4 yards per play, and this time, no fourth-quarter heroics for the most part. The offense was just dead all night. Here's Sean Payton about what happened last night on the field.
I would say, I think we had 8 penalties. Let's start there. And then when you take those penalties and you say, all right, I felt like it was a night where when it was third down, I was looking on the wrong section of the third down sheet. And when you get over there too much, it becomes difficult. They did some things in their defensive scheme base, versus some of our sub that maybe created some minus runs, but I was pleased that we closed it out. They knew we were going to run, we were going to run, and we were able to finish the game. So we'll look at that tape. We'll enjoy the win, and then be back at it Monday.
I mean, I guess you can enjoy the win, and you can only beat who's in front of you. And look, in the NFL, you don't really apologize for the victories. And as you just mentioned, if the Denver Broncos somehow get themselves a bye, then that's going to be, I guess, all worth it when you have to go up to Denver to play that defense. But you hardly look at this offense and the way it performs and think that you're going to be in any sort of danger. And you don't want to put it all on the shoulders of Bo Nix. Should note that last night the running game for them wasn't particularly great, but still J.K. Dobbins averaged 4.3 yards per carry. But Bo Nix again last night, less than 200 yards passing, 16 of 28, 5.4 yards per attempt, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. I think the thing that really sticks out to you when you look at Nick's performance is on the dropbacks in which he was kept clean. He was not pressured. He got to operate from a clean pocket. Still, again, for Knicks in this game, He's 11 of 16. That's great. 134 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions, and, of course, threw an interceptable pass. PFF gave him a 55.7 in terms of his passing grade on downs in which he was kept clean. The interceptable pass, of course, to the left sideline that careens out of the hands of a Raiders receiver. It was just poor. It was disjointed for the Denver Broncos. And even though you're having the success in terms of your record, I would assume that there's no way that you can feel comfortable with the way this season has gone. And yet Sean Payton had a back and forth with a reporter yesterday about this very topic, and he didn't seem too happy about bringing it up.
Sean, again, as you've said, your record says who you are.
Exactly right. But are you going to say but? No. What's your question?
Are you comfortable with the script of just kind of how these games continue to be won?
We're never comfortable as coaches, but there's no buts. So you're asking, am I comfortable as a coach? We're never satisfied. If my answer were to you, I'm comfortable, that'd be silly.
It would be, but it also, you don't have to urinate on us and tell us it's raining. I think everybody can see what's going on with his offense right now at this point, and that's going to be the big question. And that is ultimately what hangs over this Broncos team. And it's somewhat unfair of Peyton to kind of go after him in that range. It wasn't even that bad, but the whole point here being is, we see what's going on. And this offense, we talked about this yesterday, the reliance on the big plays. How about that again yesterday, by the way? We talked about Bo Nix in terms of the longest completion. He got there. He gets a broken play down the right sideline. But then everything else was non-existent. And the Raiders, for the most part, did a good job, which is what their defensive profile told us they were going to do throughout that game. Raiders, again, going into last night, top 10 defense in terms of allowing explosive plays, 9th in terms of pass explosive plays allowed, 9th as well in terms of rushing explosive plays allowed. And for the most part, they contained those throughout the entire game, outside of the one that set the Broncos up inside. But Sean Payton as well, as he mentioned in the first clip we just played, weird spot in his play sheet and what we're going to do with this, what he was doing on his play calling, the weird decision to kick and not understanding your own kicker's range, and that in mile high, think about that, not knowing and having a kicker come up short when you're kicking out there in Denver. It seems almost impossible when you're talking about the decision-making there. But the Broncos, you come away from that game, I think, believing and thinking that they are everything that we thought they were, especially on offense. Remember, Denver floating around 26th in terms of success rate now for the season. A brief breakdown for audience, if you weren't with us earlier, if you don't really understand it, essentially is what are you getting the percentage of yards you should get on a given down. In the percentage you should get on every down is different, first down, second down, third down. But either way, this team doesn't remain on track. Bo Nix continues to be inefficient. They might get this 1 seed, but from a power rating standpoint, we will talk about our market power ratings coming up a little bit later today, as we do on a Friday. You're slowly starting to see the market come around on where this team is, and I would assume Denver is going to take a small slip from where they were, and they weren't even that high. They were floating around the 81 line. Again, we'll reveal those a little bit later, but you have to really look at this Denver team, and there was a lot of, hey, he's just getting wins. It's not that anymore. This is one of the worst quarterback systems that one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL statistically right now, and we have to see if this is going to get any better. But we should not just focus on the Broncos from last night. I was amazed by this watching press conferences yesterday. This is Pete Carroll in his introductory comments, walks up to the podium, has a couple of things to say. This was an abhorrent performance from the Las Vegas Raiders in every fashion. I was texting back and forth with Matt Brown, and the comment was made, I think we could have this team up by 10 at this point right now. But let's just listen to what Pete Carroll has to say. After watching his team average less than 3.5 yards per carry, be limited to 7 points, came out fire and brimstone.
We came into this game with the thought that it was we're going against a terrific team, playing really well at home, on a roll. It's going to be championship atmosphere, and the Thursday night and all of that. And I made it a point to our guys that this is a great opportunity for us to go into and handle it and go out there and battle and give ourselves a chance to win a game. And I was so fired about the way we played in general. To fight against these guys like that the whole night long and have a chance to tie the game up, and then what would happen next, I don't know. I think we would win. And so there's a lot of in-between things to talk about. But the way that they competed was just what we're hoping for. It was just what we're looking for. And could we not clip a guy? Could we not hold a guy? Yeah. Could we not pick a guy? Yeah. There's so many things we can get better at, but the fight is in this dog now. Ain't no doubt about it. And so I couldn't wait to tell them how proud I was of the way they competed. And so we all know in this room we're going to do something. And so it's just a matter of time.
The fight's in the dog now. Very proud of his team. Couldn't wait to tell him. It's incredible. The Raiders have now lost 3 straight, and obviously they have lost 7 out of their last 8. The lone victory coming against the worst team in the National Football League, the Tennessee Titans. So at least they have that going for them as they move forward. But this team, I mean, I guess credit. They've covered the last 2 games, and I guess in our realm, that's all that matters. But that was a very poor performance for Geno Smith in this offense. And by the way, Geno now tied for the league lead in interceptions. I'm going to have to go back and look. We had somebody shout us out, and maybe if you're watching or listening, it was you. Tweet in at me, JVT at VSiN Live. Somebody in the offseason had given us a, hey, look at Geno Smith to lead the league in interceptions. It was a very smart play because they're not going to go away from him. Even last night, suffers a quad contusion, goes out for a drive. Kenny Pickett gets in there, which I'm surprised they did, and then gets right back in. So they're not going to give up on Geno. But this is bad. And as the Raiders move forward, Cowboys coming up at home in 10 days. Then you get the Browns, Chargers, Broncos, Eagles. We talk about all of these teams in contention for the fewest wins in the NFL. The Raiders have 2. But I don't know if there's a third on this schedule outside of maybe getting the New York Giants at home late in the season. But we'll get back to the National Football League. Mike Palm's going to be with us in just a couple of minutes. Get his thoughts on what we watched last night as we spin this forward into the glut of Week 10. We'll also take a look at our market power ratings, some of the breaking news in the NFL, and how it impacts because we're getting some clarity on practice status and more. So don't go anywhere. It's Money Moves here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Watching Money Moves here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
The holidays are back at Starbucks, so share the season with a peppermint mocha made with Starbucks signature espresso. Velvety mocha and cool peppermint notes topped with whipped cream and dark chocolate curls. Together is the best place to be at Starbucks. And we are together with Mike Palm, who joins us at the desk every single Friday. Sir, how's it going? I like the cut of your jib. I also like your outfit. I'm a big fan of the maroon with the black. Looks good.
Thank you. I like the caramel brulee latte. I'm a big sucker for that now that it's out at the holiday time.
Well, as you know, the only thing I have in my background is a Starbucks barista. That's where Bill 80 discovered me.
Your total work history.
Yes, exactly. Nothing else. So I can speak to this as a professional and say I would agree. I'm a big caramel brulee fan, and not just because we had the ad read, but my favorite because I am a big chocolate and mint guy. Peppermint mocha is fantastic, especially in Frappuccino form.
Do you remember when they used to have smoked butterscotch at Starbucks?
Sure.
And then they discontinued it. But there were like stores that still had it because they sold so little of the syrup.
Yeah.
There was like a store near San Diego that had it like 2 years after it was out of commission.
Oh, really?
And I would go there when I was in San Diego and say, do you still have it? And then finally they said, no, we finally ran out of it.
So I should use this moment to say, because this is probably the closest I will get to a Starbucks executive hearing me, considering they're probably listening to some of these reads. Folks, the Valencia Orange Refresher was the greatest drink of all time, and I need that to come back. That was there when I was there. Again, my only work history. I have nothing else in my background, so I remember it fondly. That needs to come back, please. All right, with that, football, I wanted to start this with you and talk a little bit about the NFL. First off, post-trade deadline. We had some pretty big deals. I think this is cool, the new age in the NFL. You know, you're starting to see these analytics folks enter the front offices, so you're starting to see these trades a little bit more often at the trade deadline, right? Teams going in, saying, F them picks, let's go get some guys. What'd you make of the deadline as a whole and any move that stuck out to you the most?
Well, I think the Jets are the big winners.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they did a great job stockpiling first-round picks the next couple of years for a team that wasn't going anywhere. And then I look at the Cowboys and say, what are you doing? This is not a playoff team. What are you... Anyhow.
The Cowboys, if you really want to break it down, the Cowboys shipped off Micah Parsons to move up in the draft and for 2 defensive tackles. That's pretty much it. That's it.
It's incredible. So we have bad prices on Seattle because we took all the Seattle action before the season started,
Sure.
big bets on. But I thought Seattle, that's significant because I think this gives Sam Darnold another speed threat. I think it helps JSN. I think the Seattle team sneakily might be might just be the best team in the NFC. Might be.
Yes, so I'm with you. I mean, the NFC doesn't look that daunting, to be quite honest. So I don't think it's a high bar to clear to achieve that goal. I have Darnold at 80-1 to win MVP, so I'm really hoping that continues because he's been playing very, very well. And getting a guy like Williams, I always want to go Kenrich Williams for some reason. Rashid Shaheed, Kenrich Williams of the Oklahoma City Thunder. Rashid Shaheed getting in there is awesome. A lot more speed for this team, and they're the best defensive team in the NFL, I think. So let me ask you this: let's zoom that out because they do take on Arizona this weekend. It's been 6.5 all week long. I don't know, man. I think they're kind of a buzzsaw. I think Arizona's in for it.
We went to 7.
You guys go 7.
Yeah. So I said for Survivor, depending on what your availability was, you have a choice of so you could have Denver if you had Denver. I think Buffalo is viable. I think Carolina is viable. Chicago and Seattle. Those would be the teams on my list to consider this week, depending on who you still had. Yeah, I mean, I think if you were forced to get cute and you look at where this card is, I wouldn't trust Chicago with anything at all. If you're forced to get that ugly. I think you stay away from a divisional game, right?
Yeah.
You get a division. Buffalo's a double whammy, division on the road.
Yep.
Carolina's still a division game. Seattle's still a division game.
Indy's in Germany.
Denver was
And I would assume a lot of people, I know some have them available, but I would assume a lot of people use them Raiders week or anything else. Maybe even the Cardinals week, if you were feeling so inclined when Jacoby Brissett got his first start. Let me ask you, because speaking of where you guys moved, you are one of the 4s out there for Baltimore and Minnesota. You guys opened 3.5, so a little bit of action on the Ravens too, huh?
And that's an interesting game to me.
It's
somebody
the best
asked
game
me,
of the weekend.
if you can only watch one game this week, what are you watching? It's probably this game.
Yep.
It's probably this game because do I believe Baltimore can really – because they have such a little room for error. Mm-hmm. Honestly, you can't just say, Pittsburgh's going to go, 8-9, or you can win the division and be 10-6. You have very little room for error, and yet through the years they always stub their toes on certain. Mm-hmm. They have very little room for error now. Was it an aberration what Minnesota did? To me, Minnesota won the game with their defense last week against Detroit. I thought it was a terrific defensive game plan, and I was on the other side. I laid the points. Mm-hmm. And my argument was Flores is good against rookie quarterbacks. This is Goff and an experienced offense. They really frustrated the Lions' offense in that game. Can they do that to Lamar? And can McCarthy sustain consistent performance? I don't know. So that's why I want to watch this game, because I'm unclear.
I'm with you. Stormy and I brought this up yesterday, where if you go back and watch the game, I thought there was a lot of big explosive plays that worked for Minnesota, but there was also a lot of inefficiency with the offense on the drives in between, and I think that might be something that might be fooling people for the most part. And if you listen to smarter people than I when it comes to film analysis, X's and O's, one of the best ways to beat a Brian Flores defense is to run the ball, keep yourself in those neutral third downs so they can't just send the house after you, and to have a quarterback that you have to account for. That is everything that Baltimore can do.
It's amazing because Baltimore stopped running the ball when Lamar was still healthy early in the year, right? They had the lowest run percentage on first down, and you've got Derrick Henry in the backfield. But once he got hurt, they had to get back to running the football. Well, now you have him back, and you have the running game that you've developed. So Minnesota's also a tough place for an AFC team to go that's not used to going there. It's loud, and they have that damn horn and all that, right? That scold and all that. I think it can be intimidating. Honestly, a lot of atmospheres are very intimidating anymore. I think that can be one of them for a team that doesn't play there often.
Do you buy revenge in the NFL?
There's 2 playoff revenge spots, right?
Yeah.
I did something good, and I usually never bet look-ahead lines. I bet Detroit -3 against the Commanders last week. Sitting here doing the show with Paul when Mitch was sick on Wednesday, just because at that time Seattle was 3. And I said, is this really going to be the same line? Is the market really going to have the same price, Seattle and Detroit both 3? Mm-hmm. I didn't know Jaden Daniels is going to get hurt, right? And then this game gets to 9, and now it's 8. I think the Detroit game more so than the Green Bay game.
Yes.
Because they come off the NFC Championship game in San Francisco, where they blew a 17-point halftime lead, go 15-2 and get the 1 seed, and get embarrassed at home, 45-31. Couldn't stop the Commanders at all, right?
Yep.
I think that is a game they circled in their mind, more so than Green Bay should be up for a Monday night game anyhow, whether it's Philadelphia. They were, I thought, non-competitive in that wild card game. That was a 2-7 game. I know there was the fumble kick, and did they really recover it or not? They complain about that, but they really were lackluster in that game. Yep. But they have to get back up here, and they should be up. Do I think they should be a 2.5-point favorite? I don't know. It stayed that way the whole week. It hasn't moved. If it ever got to 3, I'd be taking 3 with the Eagles pretty quickly. But I haven't made a play on the game.
It'll be terrible. But as I was saying yesterday, That's like the teaser of the week, right? Lions down and then get the Eagles up. I feel like it's very hard to see a scenario in which the Eagles don't at the very least stay inside of. And I got it at 8. I got it at 8.5. Like that seems like a very popular teaser.
I just did that teaser for my Chicago radio show.
Right?
That was my teaser of the week.
Yeah, like it seems really. It's almost one of those not too good to be true, but that one stuck out immediately when you look at the board overall. All right, before I always like to pick your brain on hockey. Anything else NFL before we move on?
I don't like to bet the international games, but I think 6.5 is too much with the Colts.
I agree.
I look at the Atlanta New England game as a comp. Mm-hmm. And remember, the look at was 2.5. All of a sudden, it got to 5.5. And a lot of sharp people told me take the 5.5. Well, that was definitely the right side in that game. That was a coin flip game. Atlanta had a chance to win on the end with the ball. And now I look at the 6.5, and I just think it's too far. But I don't like to bet international games. The travel, everything is wonky, right? So I generally tend to stay away. I did for a very small amount. Take 6.5 in that game.
And the big news today, or literally and figuratively for the Colts, DeForest Buckner hits IR. So that's going to be big for them in terms of staying inside of that number for Atlanta, I should say. And that receiver core is so good. I mean, London was awesome against New England. They looked fantastic. So, yeah, I'm with you. I think it's a really big number. All right, hockey. So, anything today that's worth pointing out here? How's the season been going?
So, season's going well.
Yep.
And the Ducks are playing great. They're on top of the Pacific Division, really ahead of schedule. We had an easy winner with Anaheim last Friday. I'm going to go to the Islanders tonight, and I'm still trying to figure out if I want to lay 155 in this game or take the puck line. Maybe a bet them in regulation. I'm going to play the Islanders in some fashion. It's a scheduling spot. The Wild off a 4-3 loss in Carolina. Now back-to-back go to the Island tonight, and the Islanders have been off for 3 days. And Gustafsson played last night, so you're probably going to get the backup for Minnesota. Everything says Islanders here in this spot. I just haven't figured out how I'm going to bet it.
I was going to ask you, we have our last minute here with you. What do you make of this start for Detroit? Is this real? Just lost on the road, of course, here to the Vegas Golden Knights.
Yeah, they didn't put up much of an offensive performance here, but they've been playing pretty solid. Everything in the East, 5 points separate first from last in the East, so it's hard to say. I'll give you a couple futures bets, though. Logan Thompson, you can still get at 12-1 for Vezina.
Okay.
And then Cale Makar is going to win the Norris every year that he doesn't get hurt. He's still minus 120 in some places, right? That's like an award you're just betting him not to get hurt. I did add Scheifele, which you could have had at 500-1 for Hart before the year. He's still 50-1. Here's a trend to look at. All these guys that are borderline to make Team Canada or Team USA in Italy for the Olympics have been having great seasons, while the stars who have their spots already solidified have kind of gotten off to slow starts, all the big superstars. So just see if that trend follows. These guys are playing to be on a national team.
And I assume the others, they know more hockey. They got to be taking it easy on their bodies a little bit, too.
And you're going to have to go play in Italy. Yep. And by the way, I love Canada to win the gold.
Okay, I like it. Mike, thank you very much as always, sir.
Thanks, John.
Appreciate it. When we come back, Will Hill is going to join us, get his thoughts on the weekend that will be in football.
Watching Money Moves here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Big thanks to Mike Palm, who joined us earlier. And remember, if you missed out on any part of our conversation with Mike or any part of the conversations we have here, you can check out everything we have up on the Money Moves podcast feed. Just search Money Moves wherever you get your pods. Like, rate, review, subscribe. Very much appreciated. Sounds like we're going pretty well, so we appreciate everybody who's already done just that. Speaking of pods, a wonderful one. The Shoulda Bet More podcast. That's where you can find our next guest on the Progressive Guest Line, Will Hill. You can follow him up on Twitter at @NotTheWillHill. William, it's good to talk to you, buddy. Want to dive right in, not waste any more time. National Football League week is upon us. Let's talk a little bit about what we just watched at the trade deadline and tie it into this weekend. The Jets ship off 2 defensive studs. Surely you're not looking at New York here. They've given up.
Give me the Jets plus 2.5 JVT. Who the hell are the Cleveland Browns to be laying the points on the road against anyone? You look at the quarterback, Gabriel. He's from Hawaii. He's made records. He's made comments on the record in the past that he doesn't like playing in bad weather, that football should be played in good weather only. And he doesn't have the greatest arm in perfect conditions. Now you're going to get what looks to be a rainstorm here Sunday in the Meadowlands. It's a Browns defense. They're really good, but they have not been as good on the road. You look at some of the points given up on the road. I know there was a Ravens game where a lot of it was turnover based. They didn't play as bad as the final score, but they hit 40-something to Baltimore, 30-something to Detroit, 30-something in New England, and they've been dominated at home. So I just think this is a little bit of an overreaction. I think the Jets, they're going to hear all week that they're not going to win any more games. They stink. They're giving up all this. I don't know that there's 3.5 points, 4 points that separates these teams. You can still get some 2.5s here with the Jets. I think that's the right side. As ugly as it is, I'll take the points here with the Jets.
So you texted me and asked for my response to the trade. I gave it to you, but then you did not respond yourself. So what do you think of the trade?
I was surprised by the price tag. I get if you get the best version of Gardner and you put him in a spot where he's revitalized. The Colts, they've got an eye for talent. They see the traits. You're going to, and I think that was your response. If you get the player you got the first couple of years, it's not an overpay. It's maybe even a bargain. But look, we're always in this. Somebody had to win the trade. Somebody had to lose the trade. It can make sense for both sides. I think it certainly made sense for the Jets. Where are you going with this core, with this roster? Even though it's a little bit frustrating, I'm sure, as a Jets fan, to have a draft not that long ago. What's it, the 2022 draft? You can't have a much better draft where you have offensive rookie of the year, defensive rookie of the year, Breece Hall, some other good pieces, and then you turn around a couple years later and you got to sell it off for more picks. That being said, you're not going anywhere without an offense, without a quarterback. This core wasn't taken anywhere. I love it from the Jets' perspective. I don't hate it from Indy's perspective. I thought the price tag was a little high, but again, if you get the best football you can out of Gardner, it's going to be a price well worth paying.
Yeah, as I keep saying, a lot of people are freaking out about the 2 first-round picks. One of them is going to be a late first-round pick. We know this because it's next year's draft, and if the Colts keep winning, then you're hoping it's in like the mid to late 20s. And then we'll see what happens next year with another full season of Daniel Jones. And it's A.D. Mitchell, who's very talented, but at the same time did cost the Indianapolis Colts one of those 2 losses, as you look at their record right now, considering the penalty and, of course, the fumble out of the end zone. So I think you hit it on the head. It could be good for both.
Yeah, and one last thing on this. Lombardi used to always say this, Michael Lombardi, now the UNC GM. When you give up multiple picks for a player, don't look at it like you gave him multiple picks. You used one of those draft picks on Gardner. It's like you drafted Gardner with one of your first, and you gave up an extra one. So if you think of it from that perspective, where if I drafted Gardner with one of those picks, and then I just paid an extra one as a tax, it doesn't seem as cumbersome, even though it's the same way of looking at a different thing.
Yep. All right, Will Hill with us looking at the schedule for the National Football League. It has been a while since we've done this, Will, but got to pull out your sword here. You and I going at it.
Oh, no.
Head-to-head, Seahawks, Cardinals. Who you got?
Oh, no. I don't want to face the big bad bully that is JVT. I'm going to take Seattle. I'm sorry, I'm going to take Arizona. I'm going to take the points. I know you like Seattle
slip.
here. I like Arizona.
Slip.
Yeah, exactly. I might have to, tease my way out of this or something. I think Arizona's underrated. I followed them because I got that Gannon Coach of the Year ticket, which is obviously not going to get home. They're +9 in point differential. They're one of these teams, and we'll talk about it, I'm sure, with college games coming up. A couple plays here and there. They're 3-5. They could just as easily be 5-3. They dropped the pass that would have put them at 3-0 against the 49ers. The ridiculous loss to Tennessee. They had the ball inside the 10 against your Colts to take a very late lead. Couldn't do it. And then lost a toss-up game to the Packers. They've been in all of these games. I think Walter Nolan, the edge rusher, who Mitch Moss talked about on my podcast, I had him on today. I think 50-1, he likes him for rookie of the year. He was dominant in his debut Monday night against the Cowboys. I think this Arizona team is underrated. I think this Arizona defense is underrated. And at some point, maybe Sam Darnold and the Seahawks come back to the pack. This is usually a good time to sell in the NFL when you see a team off their best performance, prime time. They destroy Washington in front of the world. I think it's a good time to sell. So that's another game that could have gone either way. That was a game headed for overtime. Seattle got a late drive, even though Seattle led that Thursday night meeting against Arizona for most of the way. So a lot of points here. There are some 7s, I believe, out there. The 6s are even money. So if you can't find a 6.5, just wait. I'm sure you'll be able to get a 7. I think taking the points is the right way to go, even though you're on the other side of it. I'm due to beat you in one of these. I think I'm going to beat you. I was thinking about this when I saw the Pacers lost at home to the Nets. I think I'm going to beat you in that head-to-head win total with the Pacers over-under. At least I might have that one going for me.
Yeah, you will. Pacers got beat. I mean, they were already shorthanded without Halliburton, and then the injuries just really took hold of that team, and they were really struggling on offense. By the way, Mitch Moss giving out futures on your pod. He literally has a futures pod with me, so I don't know about that. I'll have to reprimand him when I see him later. Speaking of, You can follow him on Twitter at @NotTheWillHill and check out the pod, Shoulda Bet More podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. All right, let's get to college football. While we will duel in the NFL, we will be on the same sidelines together in the SEC this weekend. Georgia, Mississippi State, what do you got?
I like Mississippi State. I think we're getting 9.5 or so. That's another situation where maybe you wait, you can get a 10. If it goes down to 9, not that big of a deal. And the market has moved in favor of Georgia here. I'm not a huge fan of this Georgia team. They're not great defensively. They don't get a ton of pressure. This is not your older brother's Georgia Bulldogs here. And you just change a couple plays in each team's season here. These records are not that different. Georgia, very fortunate to beat Tennessee. Very fortunate with some of the calls they got against Auburn. And then last week again with Florida. Meanwhile, Mississippi State lost in overtime to Texas, lost in overtime to Tennessee, lost by a couple points to Florida. Maybe if you want to play the narrative game, Georgia looking ahead here to some bigger games down the road. I just think Georgia's a little overrated. I think Mississippi State's a little underrated. Mississippi State still has a chance to get to a bowl, which for them I think would mean a lot. Give me Mississippi State here plus the points. I just think Georgia is somewhat overvalued here.
Yes, I mean, I just go back to last week, too. That was a catch against Florida late in that game. And then, of course, who knows what happens from there. Would agree with all points when it comes to the Bulldogs. All right, let's move further down the rotation. LSU, what are we doing with the Tigers here? Catching a big number on the road against Alabama.
Believe there are still 10s out there. I like the points. I like taking the points here. We've seen these coaches get fired and the teams perform well. Florida, an example last week. And some of it is narrative. Everyone's on alert. Everyone plays harder, all of that. Some of it is you just have new wrinkles on film and it's harder to prepare for a team that just fired its coach. So whatever the case may be, I don't know if you heard this, JVT. It doesn't seem like Brian Kelly was the most beloved figure in the history of college football.
Yes.
Whether it's former players, former assistants. You had Matt LaFleur and Robert Saleh saying, we used to be his assistants at Central Michigan. He invited us to a Christmas party. We ended up parking cars all night. We'll never treat anyone like that once we're head coaches. Nobody seems to like the guy. I think just kind of open up the windows and let in some fresh air. I think they'll play better. I think they'll play looser. There's still a lot of talent on LSU, and that's all narrative stuff. If you want to just go to the stats, though, for Alabama, outgained by Missouri, outgained in some of these games that, Tennessee, Georgia had 1.5 yards per play better. There's another one along the line here where they were outgained. There's down-to-down stuff has not been unbelievable for Bama. They're similar to Georgia where they're just not great defensively. They don't get a ton of pass rush. I think from a talent standpoint, this game is closer than the 9.5 or 10 indicates. So I'll take LSU plus the points.
Plenty of 10.5s actually out there. And in fact, Circa, where I'm sitting right now, is up to 11. Yep, 11 on Alabama. All right, last minute here that we have for you, last 60 seconds. Give us the sit rep on Kentucky taking on Florida.
Yeah, I don't like the spot for Florida. I thought last week was a good spot for them. Off the fired coach, off the bye, playing a rivalry game. They came up short in that one, obviously, and I just don't know what they have left in the tank. Not just emotionally. I don't know if you saw this. I'm sure you did. They have a cluster of injuries at wide receiver. All of their skill guys are banged up. Meanwhile, Kentucky, they played pretty good defense, beat Auburn 10-3. They could have, should have beaten Texas. They had the game in there against Tennessee where Tennessee lit them up. A lot of that, or some of that at least, were some defensive touchdowns by Tennessee. So I'm not sure how motivated Florida is. They're beat up on offense. Kentucky, I think, will come into this game and be pretty motivated themselves. Throwing the fact home field, good defense, getting points. I think Kentucky getting the points here is the right side. I believe there's still a 3.5 at FanDuel as well.
Yep. Will, always going to talk to you about it. Thanks for joining us on these Fridays. We'll talk to you next week.
All right, man. Appreciate you having me. Thanks.
No better guy to talk football with than Will Hill, and no better steak to use with football than Omaha Steaks, the official sponsor of tailgating. Built for the grill, Omaha Steak Smash Burgers, pre-smashed, crafted with premium aged beef. Go from freezer to bun in just 5 minutes. Juicy, unforgettable flavor. Look at that if you're watching up on YouTube TV or VSiN.com. And as a VSiN exclusive, going to get you 16 free smash burgers with any order of $129 or more, plus 50% off site-wide. Go to omahasteaks.com/VSiN, omahasteaks.com/VSIN. Minimum purchase may apply. See site for details. When we come back, Week 10 market power ratings. We have another team at the top. We got a new team at the bottom. We'll tell you who it is and everything in between.
You're watching Money Moves here on VSiN, the sports betting network.
All right, shout out and a big thank you to all of our guests. Will Hill was with us. Check out his pod, part of the VSiN podcast family. And, of course, if you missed out on it, check out our podcast, Money Moves, wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple, and more. So, next hour, Zach Cohen's going to be with us. Do not forget, when Zach joins us at 12:30 p.m. Pacific Time, 3:30 Eastern, we have a very big announcement here on Money Moves. Can't wait to tell everybody about it. We'll have that coming up in about 45 minutes from now. But let's talk a little football. So we have a lot of breaking news in the NFL when it comes to injuries and availability, and we'll tie it in to some of our market power ratings as well as we look ahead to the week that will be. So let's start with what I teased out going in, which is we do have some new names in some key places for our market power ratings for Week 10. So let's take a look, as after last week, when Kansas City takes it on the chin against the Buffalo Bills, we do now have two of the highest-rated teams, the two highest-rated teams together on the same line. Bills-Chiefs, both sitting on the 86 line. Remember, we are deriving these by using home field advantage of 1.5 points. And I'll say this, before we get to anything else about these, if you're wondering, like, okay, at what point, what's going on with home field advantage? You know, why are you using 1.5 points? What's the process behind this? It's a simple process for me, which is what we have seen so far in this season and taking the median result of these home teams and looking at what that is. And so right now, the most frequent result for these teams at home is exactly 1.5 points through these 9 weeks of NFL action. It does fluctuate. Home teams 70, 59, and 1 to this point with a median home margin of victory of 1.5 points. Your average margin of victory, 2.7. So you maybe, I think, can make the argument that it's 2, but I'm going to roll with 1.5. It's served us somewhat well, and I think that's the way to handle this. And there's a couple of games that we can get into this week specifically where I think you see, first off, the market may be leaning more toward 2 points potentially for home field advantage, but also not every home field advantage is created equal, and so you get some of these instances where are we giving a team home field advantage? Are we not? Obviously, the Chargers are one of those big cases. We talked about this about 3 or 4 weeks ago when the Indianapolis Colts were in L.A., and the argument is that the Chargers don't really have too much of a home field advantage, so was the market just essentially setting that up as the pure difference between those two, which led us to looking at Indy, and then, of course, Indy gets the big win over the Los Angeles Chargers. So with that, as we look at this, let's start at the extremes. As we mentioned, Bills now move into a tie from a power rating standpoint with the Kansas City Chiefs. At the bottom, we have our triumvirate, our 3 teams that are the lowest rated teams in the NFL, the Jets, the Saints, and the Titans. This is pretty interesting for many different reasons. But the primary reason, look at the gap between the lowest rated teams in the NFL, and for our radio audience, I will fill you in, and the second lowest rated teams in the National Football League. About a 3.5 point difference for for our exercise today. A 3.5 point difference between the 3 worst teams in the NFL, the Jets, the Saints, and the Titans, and the next trio of teams, Bengals, Browns, and Commanders. So let's look at that really quickly. Again, to walk our audience through this exercise and how we get to this point, we are using 1.5 points for home field. The Commanders are at home against the Detroit Lions. Current number right now, 8.5. That would put you at about a 10-point difference between the Lions and the Commanders. Earlier this morning, we were doing the exercise using Circus Lines. It was sitting at 8, which is currently what the number is. So that would mean a 9.5-point difference, and there you see the easy math. Lions are on the 83 line, Commanders all the way down on the 73.5 line, a 9.5-point difference between the two. But the Commanders have clearly fallen from grace given the injury to Jaden Daniels. And we've talked about this, but the defense and the team has been downgraded, I think, in general at this point. And I think it's rightfully so. And this is always the unique aspect of handicapping, which is, I think in general, you would look at that and go, man, even with the replacement of Jaden Daniels and the injuries, do we really think the Commanders are that far down the board? Are they worse than the Giants, the Raiders, the Panthers? Are they 2 points worse even than teams like the Dolphins or the Texans with Davis Mills? I think you can make the argument that potentially they are not, that maybe they're a little too low, which is why I personally like to tease down the Lions in that situation, getting it through 2 key numbers as opposed to going out and laying 8.5. But when you talk about the unique nature of handicapping, there is the aspect of what we talked about with Mike Palm. Is this a revenge spot for Detroit, considering what happened last year? Mike painted it, I thought, perfectly when you look at what transpired leading up to that. Well, blowing the game in the NFC title game against the San Francisco 49ers, ripping through the NFL season to be the 1 seed and losing the way you do to this team, and now coming off of a loss against a lesser division foe. it seems like this is going to be a hyper-focused spot for Detroit to really put it on the Commanders. So maybe this gap between the two is accurate, and it's fine. But I do think that you're probably on the tail end of, man, this seems a little high. But as we have discussed a lot on Money Moves, and as Stormily, rightfully so, has been giving me a ton of crap for, do we really, am I going to continue to ask these bad teams to do good things for me? And instead, I'll ask the good team to do something somewhat good for me, and that's just win by 3 or more points. But the Commanders are one of the more incredible teams, I think, and one of the better storylines from these power ratings that we're going to track here. Let's talk about a couple of others. First off, we'll start at the top of the rotation for Sunday. Germany, where Atlanta and Indianapolis are going to go at it. So this is easy. This is the easy part of our exercise. When you play on neutrals, it's a pure difference between the two. Indianapolis, a 6.5-point favorite on a neutral, according to multiple spots. Here they are. We just got to find the difference here. Colts have been on that 83 line for the last couple of weeks, so let's find the difference. And the Falcons puts them right there at about 76.5, just ahead of the Arizona Cardinals, only about 1.5 points ahead of the Dolphins. And look at that, right behind the Chicago Bears. We'll get to that, but if you see it and you go, well, that seems kind of low for Atlanta. They're finally getting a little bit healthier at wide receiver. The offense, as we saw last week against New England, is, when it's healthy and fully available, pretty potent still. The Colts, of course, just lost to Forrest Buckner. He is on IR. To me, all of these factors are leading to me to the point of, I think Atlanta should be higher up. I think Atlanta's power rating, even given the inconsistencies we have seen from them, they deserve to be a little bit higher up on the power rating scale. And the big slip up for them over the last couple of weeks was a game in which they were not healthy, especially at the quarterback position. It seems to me that the market is kind of underselling what the Falcons are at this point right now. I think the Colts are a good team. And in fact, I think the Colts deserve to be power rated where they're at. Equals and contemporaries with teams like the Eagles, the Lions, the Ravens. But I do think that the Falcons should not be getting shorted this much, especially on a neutral where really anything can happen. So give me that Falcons team plus that 6.5. We talked about it, and I would assume that we're not going to get to a full 7 here as we get closer to kickoff. But I've been wrong many times before in my life. Let's also talk about a team on the line with the Indianapolis Colts. One of the most fascinating games of this Week 10 slate. We go to Monday Night Football, where the Green Bay Packers are taking on the Philadelphia Eagles. And now we are down at circa to 1. This is the correct move. When I put this together, we were still sitting at 2.5. And now you see, and this is why. So if we keep this up, if you're watching up on YouTube TV or vsin.com, you can see that the Packers rate higher, if we're using that 2.5-point line, by a point than the Philadelphia Eagles. I just don't think that's the case. Market would seem to somewhat agree with us here. It's also been a good practice report for the Philadelphia Eagles over the last couple of days in terms of those who have been available and those who have not been. I thought that was pretty strong to make that 2.5. And 2.5 might not be that much, but again, that number is telling you that you think Green Bay is better. Even if you're using 2 for home field, like we are not, that still tells you that there's a slight edge in favor of Green Bay. And I just don't think that's the case. In fact, I think Philly's better than Green Bay as this is kind of shaken out. Don't think we can really trust where this Packers team is at this point right now. But that, to me, was a really interesting number when we first got that. And as we talked about with Mike, and it seems like maybe when we talked to Derek on Sunday, I would assume it's a very popular teaser leg, when you were able to get the Philadelphia Eagles up to that 8.5-point mark, that seemed really strong. And sure enough, we're starting to see some pushback here. Some spots are, including the spot where I'm sitting at right now, sitting at 1 in favor of Green Bay. 2 other highlights for you here if we have the time for it. First off, let's focus on this one. Tampa Bay and New England. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a 2.5-point favorite at home here at Circa, total of 48. So again, using that 1.5-point mark for home field advantage. Market telling us that maybe Tampa Bay is about a point better than the New England Patriots. I think you can quibble with that, but this is also the other situation we were talking about where home field advantage isn't essentially perfect. Neither is the situation. How do you handle it? And the Bucs finally getting a little bit of rest and coming in to take on a Patriots team that's been a little bit high, as we saw last week, maybe getting knocked off the pedestal a bit with where the Patriots were. But the Buccaneers, I think, are deserving to be in this spot against New England. And the other, really quickly, we can get on this a little bit later, Rams and 49ers. Rams 4.5 on the road against the 49ers. If you're using 1.5 points for home field, that would mean that this Rams team is 6 points better on a neutral than the 49ers. Man, that seems like a lot. It's like that's a very large gap. You can see the 49ers there on the 78 line. You just ask yourself, Do you think the 49ers are equals on a neutral to the Jags? I guess maybe. Or the Rams, are they that high? The second best team in the NFL, just 2 points behind the Bills and the Chiefs? Maybe they are. But that gap seemed really high at first blush. All right, we'll get back to those. Coming up on the other side, though, at the top of the hour, we'll get to the NBA. It is a big Friday card. And don't forget, folks, go to VSiN.com and check out everything they have to offer, including our Sports Equinox special. Only $120. It's fading fast. Get the daily best bets and more at VSiN.com/subscribe.